Here now to discuss MS Now senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard, political strategist Sawyer Hackett, Rolling Stone's political news reporter Nikki McCann Ramirez, and Nebraska Democratic Party Chair Jane Klebb. It is good to see you all. Vaughn, help us understand what the White House is thinking here.
I think we have to understand what the objective is of Donald Trump specifically, Alicia. And if we take him at his word repeatedly over the last 18 months, it's that he wants Canada's economy to effectively fold. He himself last year said that the Canadians would not be able to sustain without the U.S. as a trading partner, and that it would cease to exist as a viable country. Those were the words of Donald Trump. And so he has been very clear about what his goal is here. And the consequences for the economy domestically back at home in the United States have been of, frankly, explicit little concern to him here at this point in time. At some juncture, will it? I think that that's a question for the President of the United States to answer. But we even saw his own Secretary of Transportation, for example, Sean Duffy, come out and suggest that, Canada isn't going to win a trade war with the United States, that they don't even have a military that would be able to effectively defend itself without U.S. defense support. Of course, that is not true. 158 soldiers died in Afghanistan on behalf of the U.S. war effort here. But I think this really hits at the heart of what the goal of this White House is. And right now, everybody is falling in line with Donald Trump, not defending that prices are high, but defending the trade war that he is doubling down on yet again.
It's just so wild, Sawyer, that the president has managed to absolutely botch this. Canadians are allies. They are notorious for their friendliness, but apparently even they have their limits. I want you to take a listen. This is Ontario Premier Doug Ford just yesterday.
Did the Prime Minister ask you to tone it down a bit?
No, he didn't. I'm not going to comment, but he wasn't against that. And I have a lot of real estate on my ass, so he has a lot of room to kiss my ass.
Here's the thing. I wonder how you explain to an American, Sawyer, which in your past roles on campaigns has been your job, why having one of our closest allies, closest trading partners annoyed, angry with us, frustrated with us is bad for average Americans.
Yeah, it's horrible for average Americans, especially at a time when their prices are already, sky high, the prices of gas, the price of groceries, that Donald Trump is relaunching his dumbest trading war with one of our top trading partners just 7 days out from the midterms. And this is going to affect, I think, some of the most important states heading into the midterms from, Maine, Iowa, Michigan. These are states that are the top exporters to Canada. Canada is their top export country on earth. And they are absolutely going to be affected by this. And, it's ironic because Donald Trump is carving out energy from this new round of tariffs. And energy is the one area, I think, that makes up the bulk of Canadians' exports to the United States. And so if you remove that from our kind of trade balance, we have a net surplus with Canada when it comes to trade. And so by carving out energy and leaving all of these other tariffs in place, he's going to, increase our bills, our prices on everything that Americans consume while, not actually doing anything to bring manufacturing back to the United States or rebalancing our trade deficit or bringing revenue into the United States. It's just illogical in all areas.
Nikki, Sawyer referenced Maine. Vice President Vance visited the state yesterday. He talked about the trade war. Let's take a listen and then we'll discuss.
Canada is a country that has underinvested in its military that quite literally would get invaded by a foreign country were it not for the umbrella of protection provided by the United States of America. I think that we need to send a message loud and clear to the Prime Minister of Canada. Stop taking advantage of the people of Maine. Stop taking advantage of America. It's over.
Okay, so lots of interesting things there. One, the fact that echoes what we heard from Secretary Duffy, this idea that Canada is somehow bilking the United States of money, sort of some echoes of this MAGA, Make America Great Again, America First. The problem is that the policy itself does not, in fact, either make America great nor put America first.
No, not at all. And it looks, truly, Trump's actions in the past week almost seem micro-targeted to annoy moderate voters in these critical swing states. No, truly, it's not just this trade war with Canada. It's publicly announcing that he's going to undercut beef prices for American farmers in Texas. That's a huge deal. It's notable that at that event in Maine, Susan Collins did not campaign with Vance. Indeed. She did not show up. She skipped it. And she has publicly said that this is a bad idea. That in her state, so many of the products produced by Maine, blueberries, lobsters, all the things we know and love, go across the border to be processed and then come back into the United States. And the tariffs you just mentioned, paper products, those little like cups that blueberries come in, those little pint paper things, those are some things that could be tariffs. And that's not just going to affect Maine. It's going to affect states and cities all across the U.S. So you're seeing in this moment, at a time when voters, consumers are already being squeezed, Trump is picking a trade war with our second largest trade partner, a partner that is responsible for between 10 to 15% of the products we import into the United States. And it's not just blueberries and steel and paper products. It's also this energy threat. Again, consumers are already being squeezed by high gas prices. The premier of Ontario said, we can cut off your electricity. We can make this harder. We can make this worse. Roughly 70 days before a midterm election?
Jane Clubb, since you think about this in terms of elections and constituents in Nebraska, I think it is worth noting that Senator Collins, while she did not attend that event with the vice president in Maine, instead released a statement saying, urging the administration to return to the negotiating table. That gives you a sense of where things are in Nebraska, not a border state, but I want to know how that beef announcement played in your state.
Yeah, another strongly worded letter from Senator Collins. I guess we should not be surprised. Look, farmers and ranchers are angry at Trump. They expected him to come into office and institute country of origin labeling, something they've been asking for decades and still haven't gotten it. But Trump promised that was going to be something he was going to do, like he promised all of us that our grocery prices were going to be lower. And none of that has happened. Meanwhile, Trump, as we know, has pocketed over $2 billion since he's been in the White House for his own personal gain. And he's consumed with building a ballroom rather than making sure that our beef prices are lower. And he could do that by making sure that we had more competition. Instead, the four packers that continue to consolidate prices and consolidate, the pressure that they put on our local farmers and ranchers, Trump's not doing anything. And in fact, we had a Tyson's plant close, which just worsens kind of the competition for our ranchers. Ranchers want competition. They don't want handouts. And Trump is making it worse by flooding the market now with foreign beef.
Can you help me understand, Jane, how that is changing the politics in your state?
Absolutely. So in the Senate race in particular, Pete Ricketts continues to put on a cowboy hat pretending he stands with farmers and ranchers, but he is a billionaire. And he's going up an independent, Dan Osborne, who's a mechanic, who's a Navy veteran, who's a dad, who's an independent. And the Democratic Party is standing alongside Dan Osborne, along with a coalition of voters, including Republicans and independents, because we're tired of this corporate one-party Republican rule that doesn't ever deliver for families. When Democrats are in office, we know that corn and cattle prices are higher for farmers and ranchers and prices are lower for consumers. And so we as Democrats have to get a lot better at showing up more in rural communities. This issue is definitely taking fire, not only on the Senate race, but in the governor's race, where we have Lynn Walls going up against Governor Pillen in a very tight competitive race. It's not on national radar, but it is definitely here in Nebraska, as well as, of course, our second congressional district. And so even in the urban areas, people are concerned about how this is impacting our rural communities and our family farmers and ranchers.
Sawyer, you have a Republican strategist based in Michigan who said this, quote, "It really undermines our messaging when we're trying to address affordability." I wonder what message exactly is being undermined, Sawyer, when the president himself is calling affordability a hoax. It's the problem. He is not bought in on the premise.
No, he's been consistent on this, I think, from the beginning of this administration, the same way that he's lied about how these tariffs aren't inflationary. For the past 2 years, he's told us that these tariffs aren't inflationary for American consumers, that these are going to be paid by foreign countries. And here you have him reducing tariffs, slashing tariffs on beef imports to lower prices on beef. So clearly, it's just undermining his entire economic argument. It's been illogical, I think, from the beginning of his administration. But Donald Trump has told us explicitly within the last couple weeks that he thinks affordability is BS, that he thinks it's a hoax, that he thinks it's invented by Democrats. And I think that is just not landing with average American voters, especially in these swing states, especially in these states that have very strong economic ties to foreign countries like Canada, who are number one trade exports and import countries. So I don't think it's resonating with voters, and I think it's going to be a massive headache for Republican candidates across the country.